What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? After more than 150 conversations with executives from companies like Disney, Amazon, Netflix, and Google, I've learned that sports is a common denominator. Some of our guests' athletic experiences earned them a place in their sports Hall of Fame, like Chick-fil-A Chairman Dan Cathy. Some hung up their cleats after high school, like Delta Airlines CEO Ed Bastian, while others, like Condoleezza Rice, claim they weren't that great in their sport. But no matter their skill level, they have all told me that being a part of a team taught them leadership lessons that they still use today. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, I'm your host, Don Yeager, here to give you an all-access pass to genuine, authentic, fireside chat-like conversations with today's business icons so that you can create powerful change in your organization. This is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is George Tinsley Sr., a man whose journey from humble beginnings to entrepreneurial success is packed with lessons. George developed a love of basketball at an early age, and it was the belief of his coaches that helped him become the first in his family to graduate high school. His basketball skills earned him a college scholarship, and after playing professionally, he transitioned into coaching, teaching, and eventually business leadership. Along the way, he worked alongside Colonel Sanders at KFC, served as a corporate executive, and went on to build two thriving companies operating franchises and licensed businesses in Florida and Kentucky. With more than 35 years of leadership in the hospitality industry, George has a wealth of wisdom to share. Make sure to check out corporatecompetitorpodcast.com/notes for my favorite quotes and reflection questions to help you apply today's lessons.
You have to actually, Don, pour yourself into your business. If you're going to be a franchisee, if you're going to own your own business, then you've got to make that commitment to be involved and not be an absentee owner. And being involved means that you've got to properly select, train, and encourage your employees to be the best that they can be. And you've got to walk the walk and talk the talk. You can't say one thing and do something totally different. My commitment was to be there in each one of our restaurants as much as possible, talk to our guests, show our employees that's what we need to do as a company, and also make them feel a part of the experience of what we're doing and the successes that came from the business.
George, thanks for joining us.
It is my honor to be a part of your podcast today, so I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. I got to tell you, we've had a lot of firsts in this podcast, but we've never had anyone that can claim these three unique claims to fame. You played professional basketball in the ABA, right? The old ABA for the Kentucky Colonels.
Correct.
Then you worked alongside Colonel Sanders at Kentucky Fried Chicken, and then you became a franchise owner of KFC. That's a lot of Colonel in your journey. So I got to ask, of those three remarkable experiences, which one taught you the greatest lesson?
I think I learned from all three, but what would separate as far as tenure is concerned would be the experience of working with the Colonel side by side for 3 years and working for the corporation for 8 years and learning all about the business itself from both corporate side and also the franchising side, which playing basketball was neat and so forth. But at the end of the day, the longevity, it comes back to the experience with the Colonel and learning the business.
You know, it's funny because one of the things I learned about reading stories about the Colonel a number of years ago, a lot of people like to think, oh, he was just this young guy who started a chicken place, but got old and gray and then became a kind of an iconic figure. He actually didn't start the company until later in his career. Is that correct?
That's correct. Later in his life, and a number of different developments that took place in the business, as they do today, pushed him into, from an operating standpoint, to franchising.
Tell me the story. Is there a great story that you remember about him?
There's many stories. And there's one story that I almost lost my job about, and that is that each class that we had, we would always go back into the kitchen and we would cook his original recipe chicken. And we would cook it on a 16-quart pot, which is his original way of doing it. So we'd go through the whole process of him breading the chicken because we'd already have everything else pretty made up for him, so it wouldn't take so long. But he would he would cook the chicken, and then we would make the gravy. And so what was an unknown thing to most people was he was really big on his gravy. He would tell us, he would say, the gravy was so good, it would make you throw the chicken away and eat the gravy. And he had this little gold spoon that he carried in his pocket to let folks taste it. So we went through the whole process of the chicken, and the chicken came out. Some was golden brown, some wasn't, because we didn't adhere to all of the total recipe. But the gravy, we would go back into the classroom, and each person got a chance to sample some of the gravy. And we did the chicken in the kitchen. And so the class asked me what was the recipe. And so the colonel had written it down one time. He had gone through it one time, and I wrote it down as he went through it. And I Xeroxed it and made copies, and I gave it to them. Oh, man, several of the students went to the colonel to get it autographed, and he pitched a fit. Where did you get this from? I thought I was going to lose my job at that particular time.
Well, but one of the things I guess you learned right there is that people who are lucky enough to make something special they don't want the world out there just duplicating their.
That's correct.
How did that story end? What did he say to you?
He let it go. We had developed a little bit of a relationship over the 3 years that we actually worked together. So he kind of let it go.
So you spent that time side by side with him. You develop his training program. What's the best leadership lesson he ever taught you?
To take care of your customers. The customers were first. And he would always say that the employees were overhead. Customers were the most important part. And you wanted to make sure that they were happy. And part of that process is what we developed in the classroom. I pretty much threw it out there was kerneling. And that was that what he did, he would go out and he would visit the tables with the customers, checking to see how they felt about the product, seeing where they're coming from, where they're going, and also see what was left on the plate, what was being thrown away, to understand whether it was too much of a serving or whether that particular product just wasn't good, etc. So there was a lot that could be learned in that experience. And I think in my business, as I've grown my business, that was probably one of the most important things, was to have that contact with the customer base that you have.
But it's not just asking questions. I love it. It was a full experience. He's watching, he's looking. What are they throwing away? Trying to discern why. And so in everything that he was doing, he was trying to make sure that he was better the next time that he did it. Now, in prepping to be with you today, I read that you grew up in Smoketown, Kentucky. You had quite a challenging childhood. Tell me a little bit about that childhood and how it shaped the resilience that you lean into today to work and succeed.
The lady who raised me, her name was Willie Tinsley, she kept me. My mother left me with her, and whatever the real story is, she didn't, at the end of the day, she didn't come back. And Willie Tinsley, which I will refer to as Mama, raised me. She was 65 at the time. I was 7 months old. She was 65, couldn't read or write, had walked on a cane, had one leg and one half leg that she'd had an accident. The leg did not grow. We slept in the same bed, one room, and quite frequently moved from place to place, but depending upon whether she could meet the rent and so forth. She passed away when I was 13. I moved in with her son and his wife. They had one room and one bed. He worked at night. She worked during the day. So at night, her and I slept in the same bed. Neither one of us was very happy about that. 13 years old, I'm already 6'3". And that was my early experience. And the neighborhood, good, bad, and different, somewhat raised you. The ladies in the neighborhood who were, a lot of families were going through tough times. In the area, I belonged to Green Street Baptist Church, which my mama, who raised me, made sure I got to church as much as possible. She wasn't able to take me, but the folks at church looked out after me, especially in the neighborhood around the church. I didn't live that far away. They saw the circumstances, and Christmas, Thanksgiving, and so forth. They made sure we had the food and clothing, hand-me-downs and so forth. So all of that early experience, I learned the true value of family. I had to take care of her those early years, and that transcended to my family today.
And sports really grew to become the thing that became a massive passion for you, right? Basketball, football, track.
Once we moved into Smoketown and started playing basketball on a more formal basis, I learned that I had a skill in basketball and specifically, but track and cross country and a little bit of football. I had all of the athletic skills, which took me to another level, helped me develop my self-esteem. And once I started playing organized basketball in high school and was able to obtain a scholarship to college, it really just took off.
And you mentioned that coaches were a big part of what held you together and helped. Is there a lesson from one of those coaches that you still think about today?
It was a lesson from all of them combined. But in order to play sports, you had to stay out of trouble. You had to get your grades. You had to be a model student. And so that was preached very early. My coaches recognized that I was coming from a tough situation, and they helped, especially in my early years, as far as some of the alumni making donations and allowing us to get shoes and different things that were maybe not legal, but they really helped in that kindness. And of course, the expectation on the other side was to put forth the best effort possible on the courts. And that was pretty easy for me because I wanted to be a part of the team concept. We developed quite a great team and won the national championship our first year, and got the chance to travel to Europe and Africa and teaching basketball and so forth.
We love talking on this podcast about sustaining excellence, right? It's good. It's nice to be good once. It's tough to be good year in and year out. To do it 4 years in a row, I mean, you won 3, but in the other, you're in the final 4. That's pretty awesome. How did that experience shape your understanding of what it took to sustain excellence?
It was the full 4 years of not only the basketball, but the college community, how we pulled together both on and off the court, the effort that it took to be a good team, to be individually good, and how that individual part played into the team concept. Because one weak link in that team, and you don't have a strong team. So everybody learned their role and how we came together to be successful. And once you get a little bit of success, it grows. So we understood that it wasn't just going out there playing, it was practicing excellence in practice and doing things the right routine and following that routine and understanding too how to lose, what we would do to fix those mistakes so that it wouldn't happen again. And we lost very few games during that particular time. All of those experiences personally helped me be able to move to the next level in whatever I was doing.
Let me ask, you used a great line earlier. You said you had to learn your role. That's an important part of any organization, right? Everybody has to learn their role.
So what I figured out real quickly in my freshman year, that my role was to be a defensive player. We had 2 All-Americans on the team, or one bona fide All-American, and going to be an All-American. And so my role to get in that starting lineup was to play defense and to rebound. And the coach recognized that soon. And whenever we would do drills, he would always have me be up front. And they would call me example A because I was fundamentally sound.
Your role would expand, but only if you did the role you were challenged with at the beginning.
Exactly. And understanding, too, I had to be a leader off the court, not only on the court, but off the court. So those things that were expected, I had to do off the court. The things that were soft, you would call soft, but at the same time, they added to the overall success of our program.
You had a chance to go on to play in the ABA. We talked about it, Kentucky Colonels, right? I used to love it. I lived in Indianapolis when the Indiana Pacers were there with George McGinnis and that crowd.
Right.
So now the ABA was the Rebel League, right? You were the ones with the multicolored red, white, and blue basketball, and all the other things that made it a great ESPN 30 for 30 series. So tell me, what was that like to play in the ABA?
It really depended upon which team you were on, because Indianapolis, Kentucky, San Antonio, Denver, some of those teams had strong financial backing, and they were pretty stabilized. There were other teams that when you got your check, you made a beeline to the bank to make sure that check didn't bounce.
You have mentioned in other interviews and some other places that the relationships you built and the skills you developed through sports made you a better leader, right? That's the theme of our podcast. But you said particularly in taking on challenges, turning defeats into opportunities. Can you share a specific example from your career where what you learned in sports helped you lead more effectively?
In 1995, I had a Kentucky Fried Chicken that was ranked for town size in the top 3 in the nation in sales. And one April morning, the restaurant burned down. And when I got there, I saw flames, people standing, streets blocked, the whole thing, and the store was burning down. And I looked at this and I said, oh, okay, I got all my employees over here. I had 45, 50 employees standing on the sidewalk. And rather than totally panic, and probably God speaking to me, I saw some lunch trucks or some what was called roachmobiles lined up, getting ready to make their stops and so forth. So while this was burning up, I knew because of my background development, how long it would take to scrape and rebuild a restaurant. Not necessarily one that burned down, but I calculated in my mind what I needed to do. I had a couple of other restaurants, KFCs at the time. So I decided to buy a truck and put a warming cabinet and put a cash register, a generator, the whole thing on that truck. I followed those lunch trucks to all of their different stops and recorded the time. And so I decided to go take that truck and fill it up the morning at one of my other restaurants. And I went to those spots and beat those trucks as they were going to their spots, and then made some other spots, come back to the burned down parking lot and let people and still sell whatever I had on the truck and let those people know that we were coming back, that we were going to come back bigger and better. Hey, I had an opportunity to see what my issues were in the past restaurant as far as speed of service, as far as throughput, drive-through, the whole thing. And so I made those changes in our planning stages of rebuilding. So that restaurant was doing about a little bit over $1 million when it burned down. When we reopened, we did $2 million.
So you actually used that negative to start fresh. What lesson did that experience teach you that you might want to teach our listeners?
Obviously, you never give up. And out of every dark cloud, there's a silver lining in there somewhere. You just have to find it. Have to be comfortable within yourself, to not panic, understand that especially if your faith comes through understanding that there's a way to turn a negative into a positive.
So you opened 2 KFC restaurants, right? And then you helped develop KFC's minority franchisee program. What advice would you give to listeners who want to go and break a mold as you did? What would you tell them? What is the thing they need to expect?
You have to actually, Don, pour yourself into your business. If you're going to be a franchisee, if you're going to own your own business, then you've got to make that commitment to be involved and not be an absentee owner. And being involved means that you've got to properly select, train, and encourage your employees to be the best that they can be. And you've got to walk the walk and talk the talk. You can't say one thing and do something totally different. My commitment was to be there in each one of our restaurants as much as possible. Talk to our guests, show our employees that's what we need to do as a company, and also make them feel a part of the experience of what we're doing and the successes that came from the business, as well as the community understanding that we're going to be a viable part of what they do, and again, goes on and giving back to the community. And so we've received a number of different awards for that particular approach to the business. That was the key, but being there, being the face of your business, making sure that your management team understands that this is a real business. You're really serious from open to close. and you keep your restaurant clean and take care of guests. It's those rare things that customer goes and they tell 10 more people about their experience, and those 10 people tell 10 more about the experience that really causes your business to grow.
When you lose a game, you go to game film or whatever it is, you analyze why it happened, and then you prepare through practice to keep it from happening again. You talked about that during your collegiate experience. Can you give us an example of how this approach translated into business for you? This idea of studying your situation so that you can avoid certain things happening again.
Yeah. So what we do is that you take you read your business every day is a report card. And so you see how you're performing in sales and your cost controls across the board, labor, food and paper, and so forth. And you take those reports and you analyze and you see where the opportunities are. And that stretches out into your week. You're doing the same thing for your week. And then you pull your teams together on at least a monthly basis to go over with them what the performance looks like, emphasizing the positives and working on the negatives and seeing how you compare to the surrounding market that you're in. I even would go as far as taking other companies' coupons. If you got a McDonald's coupon, bring it to me. We'll figure out how to give you an appropriate discount as far as our chicken business, because we're not trying to make it all in one day or 1 week. We're just trying to gain customers. We're trying to gain traffic, because we get that customer to come back once every 2-3 weeks versus once every 6 months, then we're going to grow our sales.
I love it, because I think that your real point there is that among the things that you were always looking to do was not just do really well with what you had. You were trying to expand your universe. And so what are some of the creative ways you can do that? In your case, I love that idea, right? Take somebody else's coupons.
Yep.
How often who would ever think of showing up at a KFC with a McDonald's coupon and saying, hey, look, I want a better deal? But you were willing to say, hey, let's figure that out.
We call it guerrilla marketing. And once again, that's one of those things I learned from the Colonel.
How did the Colonel teach you that?
Well, the Colonel he was a little bit more aggressive, let's say, but he would steal customers. He would go out to other businesses and make sure that those folks came to visit him.
How would he do that? What would you say to him?
He was pretty direct. Any restaurant within Corbin, Kentucky, in that area, he's been known to visit and let people know, come to the restaurant and we'll take care of you. And not only just the food, but there was a guy across the street that had an air hose. He decided to take that whole idea and develop it on his side. You remember now, his restaurant wasn't a Kentucky Fried Chicken. It was a service station that he cooked in the back, and he had a dining area in that facility.
Yeah, but if you think about it, but he ultimately determined that the chicken was more valuable, more profitable than the other aspects of the service station. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You've said that recruiting, training, and retraining team members is essential to build a strong team. And by the way, I love that you use that word retrain, because how do you identify when it's time to retrain someone?
You constantly observe and you're constantly inspecting what goes on inside your business. So just by walking through your restaurants or looking at the end result of your product, you can see where there's opportunities. When you get enough of those opportunities, and I'm not talking about waiting too long, but if you see that we're turning on the equipment too early, rather than staggering it based off of the opening time and how much time it takes to warm the equipment up. If you see the restaurant is dirty, any of those kinds of things that you see, you pull them together and you have a retraining and make it fun.
I love it. I think that's super important. So your advice to our listeners is that, to the leaders that are listening here, is that if you really want to be able to get the most of folks, don't be afraid to run out and do it.
It's an example that you take on just by being an owner it's fine and dandy, but when you're an owner and you're involved, and I'm not talking about dominating, doing everything for your employees, but I'm talking about being an example at different times, especially when you see that there needs to be some morale boost, or that there's some areas that can be improved upon, and you can do it in a fun way. If you can do it through a teaching fun way. And as I said, when I look back at those lessons that I learned in working with the Colonel and how he really felt about his product and what he was doing, always stayed with me to be, and the athletic piece too, of how a team works together to be successful, and the leadership, even teaching your management team how to lead, not just be somebody that sits back and dictates and tells people to do things, but get involved and show what your expectations are of your employees.
So if we as other leaders are listening to you and trying to figure out how do we make sure we're engaging the art of retraining our team, first thing is be completely observant of what's happening so that you can look for moments when retraining is necessary. The second is don't be afraid to do it yourself first. Now, I know actually our mutual friend Adam Whitty, who runs Forbes Books and Advantage Books, actually had a chance to publish your book, Catch as Catch Can. What inspired you to write the book, and what do you hope people take from it?
The inspiration came from wanting to tell my story to serve as a motivational piece that no matter where you come from, no matter what those obstacles have been or are, that you can be successful if you really pour yourself into achieving your goals. And I've been blessed over the years to have been able to receive 9 Hall of Fame awards, both business and athletic. I've been recognized for success in the business, in the athletic environment and so forth. And I come from a pretty tough situation where a lot of people experience some of those tough times. So it's not unique in that sense, but it's unique, and especially today when there's the gloom and doom scenario out there. So I just felt that it was important to put it on paper. I was excited for the reception that is received by a number of different leaders and key people around the country who have acknowledged that they've enjoyed reading the story.
I love it. I think it's so important for people to be able to tell their story. And I love that you took advantage of that opportunity, and it's good on you.
Adam's company has done an outstanding job of publishing it and working with me. I've really enjoyed that experience and making it happen. So a lot of the success I owe to Forbes. They did a great job.
I love it. George Tinsley, I'm honored to have gotten this time with you. I'm honored to learn. Again, just fascinating to see somebody. Heck, you work with Colonel Sanders. How cool would that be to be able to say that? So tell me, how does someone find your book? How do they stay in touch with you?
You can find it on Amazon.com. Awesome. Catch as Catch Can is the title. And it's also, there's several other publications that have it. We are moving some books through our office also. And some of my speaking engagements, I'm carrying books along also. And that hasn't really taken off yet, but we're looking to go to the International Franchising Association next year for engagement and seeing what else is coming along. It's out there. Turning obstacles to opportunity is the tag. My website is tinsleyspeaks.com. You can find the book on there. If there's any opportunity for speaking engagements, we look at that on the website also.
George Tinsley Sr., thank you so much today for being a corporate competitor with us.
Thank you. I'm honored to be a part of your program. It's really special to work with you.
As a former Kentucky Fried Chicken guy, I'm going to tell you, that was fun. It was fun. I loved working there. Actually, I will admit, but the idea that he worked with Colonel Sanders is even cooler. Let me take 3 great takeaways from today's conversation. First, I loved what he called kerneling, right? That idea of learning to be observant of your customer. He told a story about how Colonel Sanders would walk out after cooking and then serving the chicken. He would then come back out and walk around and talk to the customers. But he didn't just ask them questions. He also was being enormously observant. And that might tell him, maybe we're serving too much of that. Maybe that's not a great product. He would try to learn by being enormously observant of the customers that he had, which would help him shape the business that is today one of the world's most dominant franchises. The second thing he shared that I really loved was when he said every day is a report card, and it's our responsibility as leaders to read the report card daily. Look for opportunities. What's in that report card? What's it telling you? And I love the way he even offered that great example. While doing that, he started realizing that what he really needed was to accumulate more customers. If you got more customers, even if they didn't come as regularly as some of your regulars, they would help you grow your organization. He started doing little things, taking other restaurants coupons. I love that idea. It was less important to him to worry about the margin on that one sale than it was to get someone in the door who would then become an opportunity to become a customer for life. So what can you do? How can you learn from that example? But the third thing he talked about was turning obstacles into opportunities, the subtitle of his book. And that story about his own restaurant burning down and how he saw the food trucks out there, decided to go develop one of his own. And over the course of time that it took to rebuild his restaurant, he had now spread the interest in what he was making to other neighborhoods, people who wouldn't otherwise have been able to drive by and see his business. So he used that negative to build and create a positive. George Tinsley, I'd been told I'd enjoy the conversation with him. I had no idea I would enjoy it as much as I did. I hope you did as well. I appreciate you. Before we sign off, is there someone you would love to learn from as a guest on this show? Send me a LinkedIn message with your guest suggestion. It is even better if you're connected with them in some way. We'll do that interview. We'll learn from them, and we'll share the answers with you. Catch new episodes every Wednesday. Subscribe at corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to be the first to get a chance to listen. And as a thank you gift, I will send you a chapter from one of my best-selling books. Stay connected with me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My handle is @DonYaeger, DonYaeger. And until next week, I appreciate you.